Welcome back to Beyond the Ballot AZ. I'm Tom Collins, Executive Director of the Arizona Clean Elections Commission.
And I'm Gina Roberts, Voter Education Director.
So, Gina, February's wrapping up. How has your month been?
It's been pretty busy, Tom. February 14th, Valentine's Day, Arizona's birthday. So we had Statehood Day, lots of great activities there. And our superhero, our mascot, Captain Activate, our civic superhero, has been out and about. First he was at the Tohono O'odham Rodeo and Fair, and then he was down at the Youth Day event at the state capitol. And I know coming soon, we've got some even more events for him, which actually, if you're ever curious, you can visit our website, go to our events page, and we show all of the locations that Captain Activate will be making a special appearance at.
If you were listening to this right when it comes out, he'll be at Lost Dutchman State Park on the 28th. So come by and say hi.
And actually, Tom, another thing that's been happening, this is a big year. It's America's 250, our 250th birthday. So there's the Secretary of State's office. They launched a traveling museum. So if you can't, get to that through February, they are going to be doing a permanent installation at the state capitol. I haven't been to it in person, but I did see pictures and it looks pretty cool.
Well, another thing that's happening in July now is our state primary election has moved. So, Gina, what does that mean for voters?
That's right. So our primary election date has changed. It's now going to be July 21st. This is earlier than it normally is. Some lifelong voters may remember, our primaries are in August, something like that. Not anymore. So they've been bumped up. Most of the reasons have to do with just the election calendar, a timeline from election administration. But why it's important to voters is because, July 21st, Tom, most people may not even be in Arizona. They may be traveling. School is, for the most part, I think, not in session yet. And so it's hot, right? We're mid-July. And so I think it's really important that voters need to make a plan. They need to have an understanding that the primary is earlier this year and what it means for them and how they want to cast their ballot. So, do they want to visit a polling location on election day in person in the middle of July? Or do they prefer, I'd rather have an early ballot at home? But if you're not going to be at home, maybe you're going to be out of state, then you have to take, some action there and let your county recorder know, hey, can you mail me my ballot at this temporary location out of state because I'm not going to be in town. So lots of things for voters to consider, but the most important thing is that they make a plan early on and how they want to vote.
Well, and also, something like 80% or more of voters in Arizona vote by mail. So those ballots are going to come out in late June. So be looking for those if you're on the active early voting list. And if you're not, you can always request a ballot to be sent to you from your county recorder leading up to that.
But you don't have to wait until election day to get your ballot back in if you're voting early. So fill it out as soon as you can and drop it back in the mail and get it back, especially if you're out of town, because you want to allow enough time for it to get to the county by 7 p.m. on election day at the latest.
Arizona's not a postmark state. Arizona is a ballot-in-hand state. What that means is your ballot has to be back in the hand of your local election official at the end of the day at 7 p.m. on election day when the polls close, just so everybody gets them in by the same time. But let's stick with elections if we can here for a minute and talk about going into March. We've got local elections. We've got an election in Tempe for city council. We've got an election in Pima County for their regional transit authority tax continuance. Can't say that 5 times fast. And then you're also seeing some folks already gearing up for city elections that are going to be going on through the summer. But Gina, talk a little bit about these March local elections. I mean, what's different about those and how are they different from some of the other elections we have?
This is a March election, right? It's probably not getting a lot of news coverage. Maybe a lot of people aren't really talking about it. And typically our local elections, they have such smaller turnout. I mean, it could be anywhere from 10% to 28%. They're pretty low, Tom. And so these elections are really important though, because, so city council, right? What does your city council member do for you? They vote on your local budget. They vote on trash and sewer and water and first responder services, things that impact your daily life. And so if you vote in these local elections, you're having a say in your local government.
That's right. If you're not voting in those local elections, you're, essentially saying what's happening is good with me because I don't really feel the need to weigh in, and I'm going to let this, small percentage of people decide what's going on. In Tempe, I live in Tempe, and I have my ballot sitting there, and I got to get it back. On the podcast this month, we had Taylor Seeley, who is she does a couple of things, but she happened to moderate a Tempe City Council debate there with the city, in conjunction with the city, and I went to that, and I thought it was pretty cool. But she's also the First Amendment reporter for AZ Central, and she checked in with us.
Whenever we're reporting, we're exercising that First Amendment right. I like to tell people when I cover the First Amendment that it's so critical to every person's everyday life. You engage in your First Amendment rights so frequently.
You just noted there, Tom, that you went to the forum that Taylor had moderated for the Tempe City Council candidates. And you also mentioned you still have your ballot. So I'm curious, did that forum, did it help you? Is it helping you make an informed decision?
Well, that's a good question. And, I'm glad I went. I will say that. I felt like a couple of things were good about it. Number one, I really did think that Taylor did a great job. She had this thing, which she talked about, I think, on the pod, that, where she kind of mixed it up a little bit by having the candidates have to write down like sort of one-word answers, because we try when we run a lot of debates in for the state. We're the state's official debate sponsor. And one of the things you're always trying to work with candidates on is to get answers to voter questions that are a little clearer, concise, trying to really get something that voters can understand. And so Taylor kind of flipped that by saying, okay, I'm going to have you write down your answer. They had to commit to something on paper, right?
Yeah.
Going to a forum like this, I think, tells you how people are going to be, how they react to questions, how they consider in a moment, what their values are and how they're going to respond to things. And I think those are really valuable inputs. I think that understanding why a person wants to run is really important. And I think that question is a question that candidates struggle with more than you could imagine. That to me is, why do I want to do this job, is a question that candidates really struggle with. They do. To give an answer that I think is immediate and clear, I thought was valuable. Whether it's at the state or local level, there's always something major happening in Arizona civics.
And we'll be here weekly breaking it all down. But also, you can sign up for more information about upcoming elections and civics on our website, sign up for our newsletter, and also follow us on social. That's it for Beyond the Ballot AZ. I'm Gina Roberts.
And I'm Tom Collins. We'll see you next week.